is Chantal Caron. Some of you know me, and I know some of you, so it's a pleasure. Not many, but some. I work at the Industriall European Trade Union. I will immediately explain to you, so that's done. We have merged actually in 2012. I have been working for more than 20 years in the metalworking sector, EMF, and then we have merged with the chemical and the textile sector, and now we form this big industry federation defending especially the rights of employees, workers in industries. I work more specifically in the field of company policy. We have 4 different sectors, major sectors in Industriall, and company policy is certainly today the sector which is of interest for you, because this is a place where we discuss all issues in relation with multinational companies and especially European Works Council's matters.
Hello, I am and I come from Finland. I have been working with PwC matters for approximately 10 years or a little bit more. I come from the Finnish trade unions, and some years ago I was also working as a Nordic PwC advisor for 22 Nordic unions. We frequently meet with Chantal. Also, I worked with the same issues on European level as Chantal is doing. And I also work as a coordinator for companies like MSN, Nokia, Autotech, and I also do some research for the Faculty of Law at the University of Turku concerning information and consultation. Thank you.
Obrigado, se tem a palavra.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose. I have been asked to introduce you into 2 topics. Obviously, we have a limited time, so I cannot go into the big detail. I think those topics would have deserved quite some more time, but yeah, we are here under some constraints. So the first one is the European Works Councils from the perspective of the employee side. What difficulties do you encounter in your EWCs, and what solutions or possible solutions do you have to overcome these difficulties? That's the first part. And the second part, I will talk about what we call transnational company agreements. I will come back to that one. Speaking about difficulties encountered in the daily life and the practice of EWCs, you have to know that in Industriall Europe we have more than 500 European Works Councils set up in our sector. So it represents actually more than half of all the EWCs set up at all. That means to say that we have a tremendous work, because it's not only about negotiating EWC agreements, it's also nowadays about making sure that these EWCs can work properly. So basically, based on this huge experience, I would say, we can detect some major difficulties which are encountered by most of the European Works Councils. And the very first one, very strangely enough, is to note that many EWC members don't understand what an EWC is about. We know that in big companies like Siemens this is not a big issue, but in smaller companies, an EWC, you have to explain what the role of an EWC is. There is often a lot of misunderstanding about this role. They think that they can speak about their salaries and things like that, so we have to really re-explain to them that it is a body, a transnational body for information and consultation. Also very interesting to note, in quite some EWCs, the members do not have a clue what their agreement contains. So this is a bit surprising for me each time when I go there, and I have to explain what is in their agreement and what that means for them. So now when I am as an expert in negotiation for an EWC, for the setting up of an EWC, I really make sure that in the agreement itself there is a provision contained saying that the EWC members must have a copy of the agreement in their own language whenever they join the EWC. So we see that there is a real need in our EWC to develop more training. And now, as you know, probably under the new European directive, this right is enshrined in the European law. Next one. So, this being said, it's good to know what's in your agreement. It's good to try and put it in practice. But we have also noticed that over the years, some EWCs have matured in such a way that they have gone further than the sole EWC agreement. And in this respect, we have the very interesting case of Umicore, a company in the metalworking sector, and under Belgian transposition law. This group in the beginning, they wanted to propose topics for discussion to management, but because these topics were not in their agreement, management said, no, we won't discuss about this. They, amongst others, wanted to discuss health and safety issues, which are really important in such a company where there are injuries and, yeah, sometimes, unfortunately, fatal accidents. So it was really an issue for them to discuss. The good cooperation between the coordinator, the trade union coordinator, the select committee, and backed up by the full EWC, permitted to come to a situation where management accepted to extend, in a sense, the content of the agreement and to discuss health and safety issues. And nowadays, this topic is on every agenda of the company. And more than that, they also received from management the possibility to issue regularly a newsletter for all the employees in the group, and this is really important. We always insist on the necessity for EWC members to be able to make the link between the European and the national level, and I'm sure Daniel will talk about that very important link between the two levels. So they have that possibility to issue a newsletter, and even management has committed itself to have it translated into all the languages of the committee. So this is a very good example, I think, of a practice which goes far beyond the agreement. But this, again, is due to a very good collaboration between all the actors in the European Works Councils. Also, we are regularly asked, and I think this is an interesting exercise, to go to EWCs and to help them evaluate their work and to help them reflect on the ways to improve their work. We had for a few weeks' time now a meeting in the Secretariat of Industriall with EWC members of a big chemical group, Johnson & Johnson, and they felt that they were not happy. They had been in existence for a long time, and they were not happy with the way they were dealing with their EWC, especially in restructuring situations. So they said to us, can we evaluate how we work? And actually I was very surprised to see that all the possibilities which we always promote to EWCs, they gave them a lot of stuff for thought, and they decided to put together a paper with some very first ideas about how they should deal with their restructuring issues, because there are a lot of restructuring going on in such a group, but also the way they should work together in future. So, and these ideas will be discussed now later on this year with the full EWC. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Let's just move here. Thank you. So I hope everybody can now see better what's on the slides. Another key element which we note in every EWC, almost every EWC, there are some EWCs which are well organized and work well together, but this is something which is happening very often. The EWC members, they hardly see each other, okay, because in most of the cases they have only one EWC meeting a year, that's very clear. important to underline, if you want to have effective EWC work, you must be able to communicate with each other regularly. And it was very interesting. We had an inquiry, asked Areva, EWC colleagues, what are the positive points you see in your work with your EWC? And actually the very first point they mentioned was that they had a very good relationship with each other during the whole year, so that they could really work in a very professional work and elaborate some projects together and elaborate some strategies together. So this is a key issue. It's not at the moment when there is an announced restructuring that you have to start and try to contact each other. It's too late, because then you are not used to work as a team. You cannot really work together, you cannot really act together, give a common answer to a situation like that. So it's absolutely important to have this regular contacts during the year. And also, I have noted here full transparency of information. It's clear that if you develop regular contacts in EWCs, you can also learn to trust each other and to exchange very openly and transparently on any issue. I think one element which is important, what I have seen several times, is that people, in pre-meetings, so you have the plenary EWC meetings and you have the preparatory meetings. And what I have seen in their preparatory meetings, too often, they start to present their locations. In our country, we have 3 plants. They are located there. We produce this and that. Colleagues, that is absolutely not the purpose of a preparatory meeting. That is something you should develop over the year. You should develop a system. I mean, those in the room here who are EWC members, this is something which has to be developed over the year. And the meeting should really be used to discuss together issues of common concern and to prepare for the full meeting with management, so as to have a really meaningful meeting with them. Obviously, we know contacting each other, communication is one of the big problems you have, because we are in Europe and we have a multitude of languages. That's a reality we have to live with. But in those situations, each case is different. It's interesting for you, and it's important, I think, for you to be creative. For instance, to see in my company, do I have as delegate maybe another staff member, another employee representative at national level who knows the English language and who can help me contact the other EWC members, things like that. But also, I think we always encourage EWC member to take lessons in English, not to gain full knowledge of the English language, but the idea is exactly that one, that they are in a position to exchange with each other regularly. So it's not about cancelling interpretation in EWC meeting, but really to be able to discuss together over the phone and by mail. Another problem which is sometimes confusing for EWC members, they wonder what their exact role is in the EWC. And I must say there are some very, very interesting cases where we have seen that, for instance here Eton, not only did they sign with management rules of procedures about the way to deal with their EWC, but they also have elaborated documents intended specifically for EWC members with the duties and responsibilities of an EWC member. And amongst those duties and responsibilities, you have, for instance, how can I contact, at what rhythm do I have to contact national constituencies so as to make the link between our work at European level and at national level. Also, how and when do I have to contact the select committee? Again, when there is something happening at national level, it's very clear that you should at least check with the European level, and in this case it's the duty of the select committee, whether the same problem is not encountered in another country. So communication in this case is absolutely important, because EWC members often tell us, look, we don't have the possibility to receive full information from management. We ask for it, we don't get it. It is true that it's not always bad will from management. It can be bad will, but it's not always bad will from management. It's also a learning process on both sides. Yeah? I think EWCs, you need to learn how to deal with them. I have seen that with many companies where I was there trying to, they were telling me, but what are you expecting from us management exactly? It's not clear to us. So really it's a difficult process, but there the EWC members can bring some answers, I think. If you exchange with each other during the year about all the topics which are important in your different national locations, you will be able to sort out what elements of information, at least the select committee will do it because they have the overview of all your communications. They will be able to sort out what is important for your future works, where are there problems, and what kind of problems do we need to tackle at the European level with the management. So also from your side, giving information, I think, what do I do? I'm sorry. Thank you. So, okay. Yes, also exerting solidarity in exceptional situation. I will leave it to Daniel to present it a bit more in depth. But it's important to know, if you have developed again this team work, it will be much easier for you to work together, to share common objectives, to develop common strategies. And this is also one of the points which many of our EWC, at least those who work well, mentioned, like Areva. We have also other interesting situations. For instance, in General Motors, some years ago, now the situation has a little bit changed, but some years ago, they had developed a full strategy towards management to avoid having location closed as much as possible. They used the famous principle shared pain between the different locations, so we don't want to have full plant closures, but we try to organize a restructuring in such a way that all locations can survive in Europe. Unfortunately, in the end, after it worked for a few years, we can say, but little by little situation at GM was deteriorating, and so you have the very good example, by the way, here in Portugal, where there has been a location closed down. But here again, it's interesting to know that the EWC members can exert solidarity with their colleagues. And this really happened in a very good way, I think, in Azambuja, with the workers of GM in Azambuja. Management gave severance payments and conditions for leaving the company which were very weak. So the Portuguese delegates in the EWC alerted the full EWC and especially the select committee. So the select committee said to management, we want to be there in your negotiations with the employee representatives in Portugal. Management said, no, we don't accept you, it's a national issue. And they said, yes, but we cannot accept that you apply conditions which are worse in Portugal than, for instance, in Germany, when we have severance payments and departure conditions which are much better. So they took a pragmatic approach. They went to Portugal, they sat, it was in a hotel, they sat in a room next to the negotiators for the employee side. And whenever they needed some help and support, they just broke the meeting, went next door, and discussed the issues with the employee representatives in the select committee. And in the end, they obtained much better severance payments and conditions than they had in the beginning. So this is an example of solidarity also when unfortunately a plant has to close. Another problem which is very often raised by EWC members is the issue of confidentiality. It is very true that in some cases it's really the problem that some management, not all managements obviously, but some management really hide behind this argument of, oh, this is all confidential. I think personally you have to be very careful not to have something wrong. Number 3. Okay. So as a European Works Councils, it's important not to accept that everything is confidential. That's not possible. Because that would completely hinder the work of the EWC. When we negotiate an agreement nowadays, we say more and more it's important that you state in your agreement that when something is confidential, then management will give you the objective reasons why this must remain confidential and the time during which the issue is confidential. We have seen so often in the past issues which were so-called confidential, and the next day they were in the press. So I think there must be a reason on both sides of the table. Yeah, it's important. Also, we have problems because some national legislation identify quite well. In a sense, it's not a problem, but it can be a problem for some EWC members. They identify quite well what a confidential information is, but specifically to whom this confidentiality applies or does not apply. This is the case, for instance, for our German colleagues. Very often they tell us, look, for us confidentiality does not apply towards national workers' representatives who are also bound by a duty of confidentiality, because if we do that, we breach the law. So here again, I think it's important to have a reflection with management. It's very obvious that confidentiality, when something is given as confidentiality, it should not be developed in the press the next day. That's clear to everybody, I think, and I hope. But when you have to go back home and speak to your national employee representative body, then you have a problem. And sometimes I must say I don't really understand the problem, because we have also now at national level, with the directive of 2002, the obligation for management also to inform and consult with the national employee representation body. So those two will receive the same information as the European level. And by the way, this is also written in the new directive that those levels are to be informed and consulted. And it's even written the order in which the information consultation should take place. And then a last slide on this topic. We could talk for hours, I think, but yeah, I had to limit it maybe to the more striking examples. Getting the right information in good time. It is very obvious that management does not really always understand what kind of information is needed. And I always say, look, we don't need full presentations translated in all languages 3 weeks in advance and so on. What is more interesting for the employee side is to receive actually detailed information with figures, and figures you don't need to translate. They have to learn how to read a balance sheet and things like that. That's the first thing. But when they have that, with all that, they can already start working and raising their own concerns and preparing their questions for the meetings and so on. And there are also some figures they may need about investment plans and things like that. And that has to be developed, two parties together. And here I have a very good example, actually, of some years ago. It was in 2009. The big German group Robert Bosch. Management had announced early 2009 the closure of 3 plants in Europe. in the division brake system. It's important to know that it's a division which is an automotive supply. And clearly those three locations, those three countries would be strongly affected. But then the EWC members digged into the case and they discovered actually that the firms had signed contracts with their clients, automotive constructors, several years in advance. So that means to say they knew already several years in advance that something was going wrong and that the restructuring would be necessary. So the EWC members said, no, we cannot accept this situation. They elaborated a joint statement, in which they demanded detailed information about the future production and investment plans of the company. And they had to threaten a little bit to make the case public if management didn't discuss this with them. So it was discussed together, and in the end management understood the reasons behind this request and accepted it. And so I think this case is interesting for several reasons. First of all, it was clear to the workers' side that they could work in their EWC on long-term strategies. It was also clear to management and the workers' side what kind of information was needed to do this work properly. And also it was important for the employee side to be sure, reassured in the sense that there would not be any longer dramatic announcements of plant closures and big restructuring at short notice. So that was certainly something to underline. And yeah, I think this is exactly the way we would like EWCs to work. Obviously some management will tell you, yes, but we cannot always say long in advance whether there will be a restructuring and so on. There may be exceptions, but there are also long-term strategies and there are multi-annual plans, otherwise we could be worried about the way some companies are managed actually. So there are some extraordinary circumstances and that can be accepted, but not all the time. It should not be recurrent, I think. It should be, there must be, and this is also, by the way, one of the principles now contained clearly in the new European directives on EWCs. It's really to anticipate and manage change in the companies. So that's important to underline. I cannot do it any longer because time is running. I will take the next, and there I may need some help, but I can start already. So the other topic. So the other topic they asked me to deal with, I will try to be short now, is transnational company agreements. We must say that at our level, at least in Industriall, we have a limited number of companies where we have negotiated such agreements with companies. So what is, first of all, a transnational company agreement? Here I will not speak so much about international agreements because they are within the remit of the Industriall global union. And there is a huge difference between an international or a global agreement and a European agreement. At global level, it is more about putting on paper the fundamental rights of the employees and those which are in the ILO conventions, for instance, and so on, and to make sure that all the locations worldwide apply those basic fundamental rights. Whereas at European level, we go further than that already. They can discuss and negotiate topics which are very much the competence of negotiation bargaining, collective bargaining, sorry. And so here I would address more specifically the issue of European agreements, whereas sometimes we are involved with the European level in international agreements. In that case, what I will say here also applies. Sorry, I forgot to click. For us, it's clear the main aim of such agreements when we negotiate with companies is to improve the working conditions of all the workers in Europe and to harmonize them, which obviously is very good in some countries because they maybe have weaker working conditions, so they really benefit from this kind of approach. Whereas in other countries, they say sometimes, oh, but we already have all this, and we even have more. So in each agreement, we make sure that there is what we call a non-regression clause, stating that if there is better in a country, that better should not be affected and will continue to apply. For us also, trade unions, we think it's an important tool, first of all, to improve the contact relationship with big multinationals, to improve the European social dialogue. But it's also for you, for the workers, I mean, a means to improve the social dialogue at national and local level. I think about some UK colleagues some time ago. They had to implement a European framework agreement. They had no structure in their company to help them do this. So they had to sort this out with their company. They had to discuss how they can be better structured to help implement this agreement. The problem we have with those multinational European company agreements is that there is for the moment at European level absolutely no legal framework explaining how the procedure, how these agreements should be negotiated, the value they have, and so on. So there is a gap here in the moment, for the moment. Whereas at the same time we see that there is a multiplication of those cases of negotiations. As I said, it remains limited, but it is increasing. Yeah? So we have to take that into account. Normally, as I said, the topics dealt with are the ones which are dealt with by the national trade unions at national level. So, the question was raised, is the EWC competent to negotiate? And for us, the answer, for several reasons, is very clearly no. The EWC doesn't have the competence to negotiate. The EWC is a body for information and consultation, as I said, on transnational matters, which distincts them from the national level. But definitely, whereas they are professionals in their working tool, they are certainly not the professionals in collective bargaining. This is something which is within the remit of trade unions at national level. So the problem we have, but I have to say a word because it may sound a bit shocking to say EWCs have nothing to do with that. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to say we work closely, obviously, with EWCs. And we see that those agreements are concluded in companies where we have European Works Councils. Yeah? And very well established and very efficient European Works Councils. So that means to say there is a role for the EWC members. And one of the first roles is to say we start discussing with management the possibility to have negotiation at European level. It's exactly at that level that it starts. And then they alert, second step, they alert the European level who then take over the role of coordinating this negotiation. Also, for instance, first of all, I have to tell you that to overcome the difficulty of the lack of legal rules at European level, we have developed at our level what we call internal mandate procedure. It is now, by the way, the principle, the very principle of it is enshrined in our statutes, which means that all our affiliated organizations throughout Europe have to commit themselves to respect these. So these are commonly agreed rules on all the aspects of the negotiation, starting from shall we negotiate, who will receive a mandate to negotiate, so to make sure we have a legitimate body at European level, how will we report back to the European trade unions and to the different national unions, how will we decide at the end of the negotiation whether we accept the agreement or not, and so on. So the whole procedure, we have developed there a whole procedure which respects the different national specificities. And here I come back to our EWC. When comes the time to decide who should be part of the negotiating body, it is up to each national union to look with its national specificities who they will appoint for the negotiating body. And in a country like Italy, it will be a trade union official, whereas in a country like Germany, we see that it is very often a member of the European Works Council or a member of a national works council who has specific knowledge in the topic under negotiation. So it's very varied, and there they have also a role, an important role to play. Also important to know, for us, it's important that those European framework agreements are also signed by Industriall Europe. When we do this, we commit all our trade unions. That means to say we in a sense, guarantee the implementation of those agreements at national level. Whereas I have to say, we have had some examples of agreements signed between management and European Works Councils. We did not support them, we clearly stated they did not follow the internal rule and involve the trade unions. So we don't recognize or support them, and we leave it to our national unions to decide for themselves whether they want to implement them or not. And so we have come to some situation where some national unions have said, no, we will never implement that. So I think the internal rules of procedure is also interesting in that respect, to kind of guaranteeing the implementation. And this procedure is also very much appreciated, by the way, by the managements who have experienced the situation. They tell us it's good that you coordinate at your level, because it will take, for us, it will be much more complicated to make this coordination at our level. So here they also see a very good benefit of this kind of procedure. I come to the example of Alstom, because I think it directly interests you. They have negotiated, it was back in 2011, an agreement on the anticipation of change, and this gives really a concrete framework how to cope with the effects of the crisis. The agreement was signed by the European Federation at the time. I think it contains all the ingredients which for us are important, the famous non-regression clause. It also contains provisions guaranteeing the regular evaluation of the agreement and follow-up on its implementation. And the group which is set up it's called a steering committee, and it is set up in coordination with Industriall Europe. It is composed of trade union representatives and members of the select committee and of the EWC. And here again we see how important to have the good relationship and the good cooperation with the European Works Council, because there at that level too, obviously they have an important role to play. Concerning the agreement itself, it contains mainly two objectives. It was to anticipate the market developments and also the impact of these developments on the workforce and on their skills. So, some key principles. Oh, sorry. I went too quickly. never mind. Some key principles contained in the agreements, I think, are very important for you. One of them is the safeguard of employment in period of crisis. So they have developed a series of provisions making sure that when there is less work, when normally people should be made redundant, that they keep those people in employment, and with all kinds of measures, for instance, they develop internal mobility. They also, in times of less activity, provide requalification for their workers. Obviously, there is the possibility to implement short-term work and so on. So they have developed all kinds of tools which allow, when the crisis situation is over, that all the competencies are not lost, which is not in the interest of the company and obviously also not in the interest of the employees. Sometimes they also admitted in the agreement that this may not be possible, but when some people are to be made redundant, then they have developed a series of very good accompanying measures guaranteeing that those employees have the qualifications required to find a job elsewhere. And they have also developed a series of provisions on the anticipation, on the competency planning. Again, here to ensure the employability of the employees. I try to be well. I could tell you about the attitude of the Commission and the European Union about transnational company agreement in 2 words. They are not against it. They say that they support this development, but at the same time they have made studies, analyses, they have talked to the social partners and so on, but so far we see no sign that they would go to a legal approach, and they are considering the possibility of having an optional legal framework, but for the moment it's too early to say that yeah, at some point that will happen. It's a bit like the EWCs. We had to wait for decades to have them, and here I think we will have to be a bit patient too. So I have to stop here because otherwise there's no time.